We've seen a lot of news come out over the past couple of days that have been almost universally bullish for crypto. So we are starting to see crypto pump and we are climbing up that fear and greed index. I want to check out all of this today and give you a little bit more information as to what we're seeing exactly, as well as kind of some digging into the data that doesn't actually look particularly great, but people I don't think are really noticing that quite yet. So stay tuned. We're going to go through all of this today. Hopefully you do find it useful and helpful and all that type of good stuff. If you do, of course, a like and a subscribe does really help me out in terms of both just pushing the video a little bit further as well as helping me grow my channel as well. So let's go on ahead. We'll dive right in. We'll start out taking a look at the crypto bubbles just to show we're seeing it mostly green day. Obviously, we do have some reds here and there, but particularly more than anything else, it does look like the Solana meme coins are kind of doing better than anything else. And then, of course, we are seeing meme coins jump here and there, but mainly, Bonk and Fart coin have kind of been the two big ones. And then from there, Celestia is actually doing all right. HBAR, Sui, and Near are all doing quite well. And we've got Injective and Tia are kind of the Cosmos ones that are doing relatively well also. So some pretty interesting things happening here. If we do look at the market overview, just to get a general sense on the market, we can see from the altcoin perspective, basically everything is sitting in neutral. The market averages of 48.33. So very much biased towards basically almost exactly in the middle of everything. However, it is a little interesting because at the same time, we are seeing almost getting into extreme greed. We've moved up very quickly on the crypto fear and greed index, which is a little bit unusual, just given that, in my opinion, the somewhat limited amount of rotations that we have seen from altcoins. If we go back to the crypto bubbles, you can see we're still very red on the month. So the fact that we're already into a point of greed is a little bit interesting, I would say. We're also seeing with open interest and volume has kind of subsided a little bit over the past week or so, but we are starting to see open interest start to tick back up as Bitcoin does continue to rebound on price, which is relatively good to see. And then of course with the liquidation maps, given that we have seen some of these moves to the upside, we are starting to actually see kind of it making more sense to move to the downside, since we are seeing more liquidations on the downside, both on the 1 and 7 day charts. Not super tilted or biased in one direction or the other, but it is definitely clear that we're seeing more liquidations to the downside rather than the upside. And again, I think this does make a lot of sense. If we do look at the Bitcoin chart, we can kind of see exactly that, right? I mean, we've seen a really strong move up on Bitcoin over the past couple of days. We've broken out over this kind of level of resistance. We kind of broken through it, which was a level of support, and then we broken back through it, which was a level of resistance, or at least what it has been historically, not really proving too much of either during these past couple of days. And then you can see we were sitting in a little bit of a descending channel here. We'd seem to kind of wick above it, and now we actually have kind of broken, and we'll see if we close out of it. It's appearing that we'll close out of it right here, but we are seeing a bunch of wicks to the upside. So there is definitely a fair bit of profit taking going on here. We might see a decent bit of resistance to continue back to the upside, but at least as of right now, we have kind of broken on a new candle outside of this descending channel. So it could be the beginning of a larger move to the upside. Of course, time will tell. We'll have to see. Nobody really knows what the future holds for sure, but we are starting to see some decent positive momentum coming from Bitcoin. We can see here the highs actually getting close to the highs we were seeing back in early June, and getting close-ish to the all-time highs that we saw back in late May. So we'll have to keep a very close eye on what's going on here. Sitting about 109,250-ish, again, as of the time of this recording. So, doing relatively well right now. What we can see in the past, I'll give you a couple examples that we have looked at before. If we do another parallel channel, you can see there's a little bit of a descending channel going on here. This one isn't super clean or as clean as what we've seen as some of the others, but you can see here descending channel breakout to new highs, and then this is the one that we saw basically for the majority of 2024. There was a really strong level of some descending channels going on here. We could see this happening for several months. And then we did, kind of breakout, retest again. And then that's kind of when we were off to the races here. So, potentially something similar happening just on a little bit of a smaller scale here. And, but we do know that Bitcoin does like to do these descending channels and then usually have a break back to the upside. So we'll just kind of have to see what the future holds. If you are interested in trading Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, whatever, anything like that, spot, or if you're looking to leverage trade, I do have that link in the description below. If you are interested, you can go through BloFin or as well as BTCC. I do have both of those in the description below. BloFin and BTCC both have really, really great deposit bonuses, as well as they're great to trade on. They also have futures where you can trade the asset specifically. So if you're looking to trade, let's say Bitcoin, you could use Bitcoin as collateral. If you are looking to hold in a particular type of asset, that is a really great thing, as well as no KYC or VPN. If you are interested, of course, just feel free to check it out in the description below. Also, if you are new and you're looking to kind of test things out, you don't want to get too involved with anything in particular, you can do a trading bot, or not a trading bot, a demo trading, where you can demo trade. You also can do trading bots on BloFin, but you can demo trade if you're looking to just kind of maybe dip your toes in it and not get too crazy and run the risk of getting yourself into trouble. So that's what we're seeing here. I want to go into some of the news today. What we can see is the SSK, this was the Solana staking ETF, went live 2 days ago now. The first day we saw 8.2 million in volume within the first 5 minutes, and then of day 2, this is essentially what we saw in the first 20 minutes of day 1. So it does look like there's maybe some more demand coming in within these, first couple of days. We'll have to see. Day 1 saw a total of 12 million in inflows. For context, Ethereum did over 100 million in day 1. So again, this is a nice launch, but it's nothing like mind blowing. There's no records being broken here in terms of the amount of volume coming in. I think this is, of course, it's Solana. It's much smaller. It's got, much less of a brand name, brand recognition as far as, kind of going down the risk curve. It's much further down the risk curve, even from something like Ethereum, and then, kind of Bitcoin being well above that. So, obviously the big winner of this cycle, at least in my opinion, has been Bitcoin so far. Institutions, I think, are really kind of comfortable and they are seeing the value within Bitcoin. So far, we haven't really seen too much. Obviously, we've seen the Ethereum ETF doing okay, but kind of struggling a little bit. And then Solana, kind of mere fractions of what we're seeing out of the other two. Now, of course, I do think this makes sense. And in my opinion, the reason that this type of thing is so important is not for right now, but it's for when things start to get a little bit more frothy and people are a little bit more greed focused and people are really trying to just go all in and try and, play the potential crypto alt season if it does come around. Having institutional on-ramps and also institutional on-ramps for retail is very, very important and unlocks a much larger amount of liquidity if we were to see something like that happen. So this, in my mind, is what is really kind of the big deal here, not necessarily, what we've seen in the first day or two of trading. Potentially we see it continue to heat up, but I don't really think so, just because we're not in that type of market quite yet. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you guys is news around the payroll, because payroll obviously came out. This was all kind of perceived as very great news. We can see the expectations was 106,000 non-farm payrolls being added. In reality, we got 147,000, which is quite large. The expectation for unemployment was 4.3%. We're actually at 4.1%. So things looking on the surface pretty good here. But one of the things that is actually happening here that is a little bit different than kind of what we were expecting, or maybe a little bit worse than what we were expecting, is where the jobs actually came from. And here you can see Atlas Capital has done a really great job of breaking this down. I've seen some people actually calling this out specifically as not really appearing as great as what we would see on the surface. So you can see here's the 147 non-farm payrolls that were added. Losses actually coming in mining and logging, manufacturing, and professional and business services. We can see kind of modest gains happening between trade, transportation, and utilities, information and financial activities. And then we're seeing some modest gains coming from construction, And then what is this one? Leisure and hospitality. And then realistically, the major gains happening in education and health services, and then government. So I'm trying to like follow these lines across. But the most important thing to note here, also a fairly large drop here in other services. This is very uncommon. So a pretty bad sign there. But also what we're seeing is almost half of the total non-farm payroll gains came from government. Not particularly a great sign, particularly coming from the administration that is trying to slash and shrink the size of government. I think this is something that is pretty interesting and not necessarily the best indication of an actually healthy economy. I think this is indicating more that it's all coming from the government and it's going to increase larger or more government spending, larger government deficits, further debasement of the dollar, which I suppose in the long run is good for Bitcoin, but potentially not the best for altcoins, because with altcoins, you need to have a lot of liquidity flowing, but you also need to have people with a lot of liquidity to spend, right? And so if you're seeing a larger economic malaise happening through the general population or the general public, it's going to be a little bit harder to get that same type of movement started. So, and especially if we go back, we can see this is the largest increase that we've seen since, at least in all of the data that we have recorded here. So inside of the past probably 10 or 11 months, this is the highest that we have seen, even beating, September, October, December, and January kind of being the other large months here. So this is definitely something that we should keep a closer eye on, even though we are kind of touting, jobs getting beaten and, like the beating expectations, all that type of stuff. There is kind of a little bit of a caveat there, at least in my mind. So that's just something that I want to call out to you guys, let you know that, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but this is not the resounding vote of confidence for the overall private industry within the economy that it might seem otherwise. And so I think that's really, really important to understand and note is basically half of all non-farm payrolls came from government, which in my mind is not necessarily the best thing. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. Hopefully you found the information in this video useful. I think overall, the market's still looking really, really good. I think, we are getting maybe towards a point where we could see a little bit of an alt rotation. It really depends on what we see coming out of Bitcoin over the next couple of months. We'll have to see, but I do think that we could see some potentially really interesting things happening. So we'll have to wait and see. Time will tell, of course. If you did find the information in this video useful, a like and a subscribe really, really does help me out. I appreciate it a ton if you would do that. Also, if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, anything like that, just drop those in the comment section below. I do read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.